Hey, Salvador Briggman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified YouTube channel. And if it's your first time tuning in, you know I put out a lot of content on crowdfunding. If you ever look through some of my archives of this channel, I have tons of great stuff, killer advice when it comes to Kickstarter, Indiegogo. We talk about equity crowdfunding, really everything under the sun. And with this specific video, I'm really gearing this towards the creative crowd, the people that are out there that want to publish a book, that maybe have this idea that's been just kind of bubbling around in your head, and like you've been thinking about maybe we'll do a book on this, or you have a book and you're like, how do I now get this into more hands of people around the world? How do I make this appear in people's coffee table? How do I have it appear in their library, in their home, and really just have an entire experience from reading your words or looking at the illustrations from the book? And what I want to share today is some of those secrets which you can sort of take action on to unlock this massive audience of people out there on Kickstarter and just in the internet in general, who can not only buy your book, but become a patron of you as an artist or as a writer or as a novelist or however you want to describe yourself. So I hope that you like it. It's going to come up in just a second. Thank you so much for listening, and here it is. Okay, so just a very quick preface before we get straight into the video. Today's class is going to be taught by Jack. Jack is an in-house crowdfunding expert at CrowdCrux. He's also killer when it comes to copywriting. He's growing more and more as a marketing strategist, so he knows his stuff for sure, and he's actually the one who is leading this class. And one of the reasons I think it's just so gosh darn important for anyone out there who wants to either publish a book, who wants to get funding for an existing book and kind of to expand it, or even wants to do something more in the illustration sense. I helped a lot of people over the years, and I'm telling you, right now is the best possible time to launch a Kickstarter campaign for something that is creative. I had tons of people recently on my podcast, have those episodes coming out soon, of creative individuals that are absolutely killing it, smashing their goal on Kickstarter. I'm talking about 6 and 7 figure campaigns. It's insane. Like, you know, I don't even know if I could ever predict some of these campaigns that are just doing so well. And to me, it just is a great example of the fact that, you know, Kevin Kelly back in the day wrote that article, 1,000 True Fans, which is that to become a lifelong artist or to make a career in that pursuit, all you really need are 1,000 people who are willing to pay for your craft over time. And I think it's actually even less than that if we're going to be honest. But it's so easy nowadays to find that group of people, your tribe, if you want to call it, your niche. It's so easy to find that out nowadays online. You don't even necessarily need a website anymore. You can literally just launch a Kickstarter campaign. You can get the word out there about who you are as an artist, as a writer, as a novelist, as a creative type, those types of people. You can easily get the word out there about that. You can put together a killer campaign page, and you can have people not only buy and pre-order the book that you're going to be coming out with, but also become a patron of you and support your future work. So a lot of people think like Kickstarter, one time, right? I'm just going to launch the campaign and that's it. But in reality, if you wanted to, man, you could launch like 10 of these. And I've had people on my show that do exactly that. In fact, the last person I had on my show is coming out soon. She actually did a tarot card project, raised 6 figures, and before that she had launched 7 other campaigns, right? So you never know like what's gonna hit. And I really think you should appreciate this as not only a creative platform, but also a potential business for you, potential career for you. So you're gonna love, I think, today's class a lot. Make sure you get your notebook, take some notes, really take the time to digest some of this information. And if you want more classes like this, you can always join my mastermind. I will include a link down below, which also includes one-on-one coaching with me. So that's super exciting if you're interested in getting some, you know, direct feedback and advice specifically for you and for your campaign, your specific category, your product, etc. But that being said, let's get into today's video right now.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about publishing a book on Kickstarter. This is one of those categories that's a little bit less talked about, just because I think publishing books is just, in everybody's minds, it's such an entrenched system, right? There's these large publishing houses out in New York City, and either you have a book that can get published by them or you don't. But I think Kickstarter is a really exciting alternative to that. It's a great way for creators who are thinking outside the box to get in there and garner support for a publishing project, which is really exciting for writers across the world, I think. So Kickstarter, yeah, like I said, it's one of the leading alternatives for self-publishing. You know, there's a lot of different ways to self-publish a book, but I think Kickstarter really gives a lot of the infrastructure you need to rally support around backers. with pre-launch and everything, you can really build up a crowd that's excited about really niche projects, right? So some of these bigger publishing houses, they can't access, let's say, a niche population of 10,000 people who would be interested. That's not going to be profitable for them. But on Kickstarter, you can, target those people and really mobilize them to bring a project to life that maybe in the past wouldn't have that opportunity. So let's talk about a little bit of the stats. So more than 54,000 Kickstarter book projects have been launched since the founding of Kickstarter. So that's definitely a lot of projects. About 34% of those are successful. So that's about 4% lower than the average Kickstarter funding rate. So all projects on Kickstarter, about 38% get funded. Book publishing is just a tick below that. I don't know if there's really an exact explanation for it other than that maybe some book projects set too high of a goal, or maybe they don't do the right pre-launch. Maybe people just kind of wing it. But we're gonna put all those fears to bed so that we can make sure that success rate is as high as possible. Because there has been $200 million successfully raised for books, which is, when you think about it, pretty incredible. 34% of books, that's, over 20,000 books that have been published on Kickstarter. And you think about it, that could fill a pretty good chunk of the library. It could definitely fill my little library here. All right, so let's go through some books that have been really successful on Kickstarter. The most successful of all time was The Way of the King's 10th Anniversary Leatherbound Edition. So this was actually a book that was raised last summer in July of 2020. They raised over $6.7 million, 30,000 backers, really mobilized a large community of people who were interested in these important figures from history. It was actually kind of a collection of stories from an author that had some prior success. So that definitely goes into some of those funding totals there. But it's just a demonstration of the capability. I mean, not many publishing houses anywhere are going to put 6.7 million into a book. So to see that kind of money raised is pretty incredible. Another one is called Just the Book. And that one raised about 2.3 million, over 21,000 backers. And this one was actually this summer in 2021 here. So I think between, The Way of the Kings and the book, there's really a lot of momentum around Kickstarter books. People are really starting to recognize this as a place where they can go to get new and exciting literary type stuff. As you can see from this book, it's not your traditional stuff. We're going to get into that a little bit more in a little bit, but big raise in 2020, big raises in 2021. The momentum is certainly there. And just to kind of switch up the genre a little bit, Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls. This is a really exciting project on Kickstarter. Their original campaign raised $675,000. So almost 14,000 backers showed up. And they actually had so much success that they were able to launch a second campaign, which raised even more money. So altogether, these women, they were female founders who felt like they needed more stories for girls, right? And more stories to empower girls. They've raised $1.5 million, and they've kind of created an empire, right? And who knows if they're writing another one, but it just kind of goes to show. So you have success with your first book, it can kind of launch a whole career for some people, which I think is really exciting for some authors who are trying to find a way to break in, and then the knowing that once you do break in, you got places to go. So let's talk about the types of books that we see most commonly get funded on Kickstarter. Sci-fi and fantasy are always popular. Biographies, memoirs, self-help, nonfiction explorations. So, right, stuff in the nonfiction category, stuff that people can connect with. Children's books, we just saw Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls. And non-traditional books that break down genre barriers. So Way of the Kings is definitely that. It's got a lot of short stories and then a lot of like really cool digital art and images. The book had like interactive stuff that you could go with. So, when I look at this list personally, in my own creative life, I'm a poet and like a fiction novelist. So when I see this, I'm kind of like, what about poetry and fiction? It's definitely possible to raise money for poetry or call it literary fiction, just like a novel. But more often than not, Kickstarter is about innovation, right? So it's hard to rally people behind just a fiction book from an unknown author, right? They can go to any bookstore, they can look on any bookshelf and find tons of those books, right? People on Kickstarter are really looking for authors that are doing something brand new, whether that's bringing a new perspective through nonfiction, or whether that's a children's book that's showing up in a different way, or just a totally non-traditional book. And then of course, sci-fi plays into that really well, as well with all the world building that has to go on. So on average, many book projects set a campaign goal between $10,000 and $15,000, or sorry, $10,000 and $50,000. 50,000 is definitely on the high end. This would be kind of for authors that maybe have already published books in the past or have a large social media following, a big email list already built, and they're ready to mobilize people to get to that 50 grand mark. 10 grand's on the lower end. I see projects with $2,000 and $5,000 funding goals as well. That's definitely doable. It's just about meeting that funding goal as quickly as possible. So if your goal realistically is to raise $50,000, you don't want to set your campaign funding goal at $50,000. Why is this? You want to hit that funding goal as quickly as possible. This helps you to trend better on the platform. It creates social proof. It builds momentum around your campaign. You don't want to be, halfway funded halfway through your campaign. You really want to hit that funding goal within the first week of your campaign, if possible. So set your funding goal. Our recommendation is always set your funding goal as low as possible. You're going to have to be able to cover cost of materials, which we're going to get into in a little bit. So you're going to have to factor that out. And whatever that number is, always go as low as you can. Don't feel like a low number is going to scare anybody away. I've seen projects, raise 1,000, 2,000% of their funding goal if it really catches fire. So think 10 to 50,000. Feel free to drop lower on that. So let's talk about some of the expenses you're gonna. Oh nope, we're not there yet. Sorry. So here's some of the benefits, right, of publishing on Kickstarter. We have total control. The author is the visionary, just as with any product creation on Kickstarter. You control everything from copy editing, layout and design of your book, how it's printed, how it's distributed, how it's marketed, which I think is also one of the really cool things, because if you go the traditional publishing route, they're going to market the book however they see fit. Somebody else is going to design your cover. They're going to bring on an in-house editor. And really the book, the final product, it's your book, but it's touched by a lot of other people as well. While Kickstarter book is going to be a collaborative process, you're going to be much more involved in that collaboration, all the way from, fixing the sentences to how you post a Facebook ad for it. So that's really exciting. There's a catch though, of course. With a traditional publishing route, a lot of that stuff is going to be taken off your plate. So if you're looking to do the writing and leave everything else to someone else, traditional publishing might be the route. For Kickstarter books, you really want to be a creator that wants your hands on every element of the book. Whether that's the blurbs on the back, whether that's, what's included within the text. You want to be the type of person who's willing to take that on. And it's a lot of work. So, that's why I think novelists and poets who are more like purebred writers per se might be more interested in going the traditional publishing route. They write the thing. They're like, I have no idea. I don't know about graphic design, marketing. Let's just hand this over to a publisher and be done with it. But for more full-bodied creators who are looking for a more comprehensive approach, then Kickstarter's a really good route. So it's a catch for some people. It's a benefit for other people, that total control element. Okay, so now we've talked about what kind of books are successful on Kickstarter. We've seen some examples of some books that have been creating real momentum recently. We've talked about how much control you're going to have. Now let's talk about some of the step-by-step instructions for how you're going to publish a book on Kickstarter. How are you actually going to pull this thing off? So this is a scary one for writers, right? Know your numbers. All right, well, us writers tend to be pretty terrible with numbers, but it's a really important and indispensable element of your campaign. So because you have all these responsibilities, there's costs that come with that, right? So if you go the traditional publishing route, they're gonna hire the editor for you. In this case, you're gonna have to do it yourself. So cost of editors, cost of materials, how much are the pages of your book gonna cost? Are you trying to include digital art? Are you trying to include, a certain material of paper? Are there going to be other elements? You got to think through all that stuff when you're factoring in the cost per book, which will eventually lead to how you factor out your funding goal. The manufacturing of your book, you got to pay somebody to, print hundreds, if not thousands of copies of these, depending on the success. And then you also have to figure out how you're going to fulfill and deliver the book to your backers. So you've got this beautiful book, you've hired an editor, you've got your materials together, the manufacturer puts it together. How are you going to fulfill and deliver that book to backers? How are you actually going to get it in a box and get it to somebody's doorstep? So in that case, it's just a matter of busting out the spreadsheet and adding up your costs. And then when you see all those costs, you can factor out cost per unit and start to really look at that funding goal as to, okay, well, if each book's going to cost me $15 to produce and I have this minimum order quantity, maybe I need a $5,000 funding goal to break even or whatever it is, right? A big part of any Kickstarter campaign, and I think book publishing, this could be part of the reason why maybe that success rate is 4% lower than average Kickstarters, is people neglect this pre-launch. So your pre-launch should include the building of an email list, implementing a social media strategy, and calling upon friends and family for support. So what do we mean by this? Building an email list. How do you build an email list? Well, you can do it a couple ways. The most common way is to run ads, right? So run ads on platforms like Facebook, Instagram, get into Reddit communities. You can go more organic routes as well, and try to advertise this book and then send them to a landing page where people can easily put in their email and opt in, right? And then you can engage with them over email. You can continue to send them emails, keep them updated on the launch. Build this community of backers that's ready to show up on day one and get you to that funding goal within the first week, right? So building an email list, probably the most important element of any Kickstarter successful Kickstarter fundraise. If you talk to successful creators, which we're going to get into how you can do that here in a little bit, then you'll see that the email list is king. Social media strategy, that part of that is paid ads, but also another good strategy is when you get people to opt into your email list, invite them on the confirmation page to join a Facebook group, right? That's where people can join the conversation. And I think in the publishing category and the book category, this is especially interesting because people who are opting into books and interested in books are usually passionate about talking about that, right? They want to share their ideas. They want to feel like they're a part of a community. And I think there's really an opportunity here to build like a digital pre-launch book club, which is really exciting. So make sure you're driving people to the Facebook group, send that through email communications, have that included on your landing page. And then, this is also important to every Kickstarter campaign, calling upon your friends and family. It's hard sometimes, but mobilizing that core network and really demonstrating to them how important this is to you can go a long way to getting some of those early donations and also encouraging them to tell their friends, right? So you have a friend, they're a good friend. You say, hey, I'd really love for you to show up to this campaign. If you could also tell people, who also like, the sci-fi genre, if you've written in that genre, that can be a really organic way to build up some support during pre-launch. So email lists, get that social media strategy going, and then always call upon your family and friends for support, whether that's book publishing or anything else. So then you're going to have to start building your rewards. So you've done the pre-launch, or you're acquiring people through pre-launch. They don't need to know anything about rewards yet. You're just advertising the book itself, right? But then what you can do is actually build out rewards. So let's say your book itself, you want to offer for Kickstarter on $25. Well, great. There's probably going to be a lot of people who just want that book. But for people that are really interested in this project, you have a really great opportunity to elevate people and upsell them into higher reward tiers. So instead of just $25 and they get the book, what packages could you build for $50 or $100 or $200 to get bigger donations to really, first of all, ramp up that funding meter, but then also just get more funding to put back into the book or into later projects if you do eventually make a profit on Kickstarter. So let's go through some rewards that you could think of. The book itself, that one feels obvious. Behind the scenes access to your writing process, right? Maybe they get access to a first draft of the book. Maybe they get access to deleted portions of the book. Maybe they get access to an hour-long live stream of you writing something, right? There's a lot of different ways you can get them behind the scenes of what ended up being this polished final product. Well, people love that, but on Kickstarter, they're really looking for the journey. And I think there's a real opportunity to do that here in publishing. There's lunch, coffee, calls with you, the writer. You could offer a little 30-minute Zoom date. Maybe if people are in the same city, you can meet up with them for coffee. That could be a much higher reward tier. Talk writing. People love talking with writers, and to them, writers feel like celebrities, right? So you might be going in like, I got this $5,000 funding goal for this little book I'm doing, but somebody else might be like, this is the coolest book that's ever been written. I would pay $200 to talk to this author for half an hour. So keep that in mind. Your image of yourself is probably a lot lower than how other people are seeing you. They're idolizing you as this like authorly figure that seems to be some sort of trend in society. Or maybe that's just how I want it to be because I'm a writer myself. Supporting merchandise and art. And I know the Way of the King's Leatherbound edition, they had a lot of digital prints in there. So they offered like individual print packages and, like exclusive prints and all that stuff. Hats, t-shirts, mugs. Readers love mugs to go along with it. And then also signed or exclusive or limited editions of the books. To this day, people are still looking for signed books. And, especially on Kickstarter, they're going to feel like, let's say it's your first book. They're like, and they really believe in you. They're going to think, oh, wow, if I could get a signed copy of this very first edition book and they believe that you're going to be a famous writer, that's a real opportunity for an exciting reward. And I've seen signed and limited editions with some exclusive content do really well as a higher reward tier. Call it in the $50 to $100 range. All right, let's keep on moving. So you're doing your pre-launch, you're getting all these emails, you're coming up with your reward tiers. Now you got to start building your campaign page because we're getting close to going live, right? So here's some of the things your campaign page should have. An engaging title and subtitle. So on Kickstarter for books, the title of your Kickstarter campaign is most likely going to be the title of a book. So I think you have to kind of do some extra work here and think, okay, if I'm really going to try to launch this thing on Kickstarter, this is my medium to get it out there. How can I title this book to make it clickable? Which I think is really interesting and different because it's atraditional compared to the usual publishing industry, right? Of course, you always want to go with an engaging, attractive title, but I think it's especially important for Kickstarter. And let's say your title maybe is a little bit more on the nonfiction end and maybe a little bit stagnant. Get creative with that subtitle and think about how you can make people build that curiosity gap. Like people, they read your subtitle and they think, what is this? And they click on it and check it out. That's the initial step, is getting them to the campaign page in the first place. Then you have your Kickstarter video. So once they've landed on your campaign page, the first thing that's going to pop up is the video. So you want it to be super engaging. I think this is another tough one for authors. You might want to bring in, if you have a friend that does video marketing, that kind of stuff, maybe you can write the script, but execution of this video is also really important. I've seen a lot of animated videos do really well for publishing, right? Because it's kind of this imaginative space. All books are. And I think animation plays in really well with that. So Kickstarter video. Book, usually we recommend 2 to 4 minutes for the video. For books, I'd go shorter even. I'd go 1 minute to 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, if you have a real following behind you. But you got to capture attention quick, make them laugh, make them scared, make them sad, make them lonely within the first 10 seconds. It's all about cultivating that emotional response right off the bat, especially when it comes to literature, right? It's hard for people to read these days. There's so many forms of media. You got to get them okay, I want to invest my time into this book. And that starts within the first 10 seconds, which is a little bit scary, but also you can definitely do it if you put some thought into your script. From there, you want to keep on building it out with images, GIFs, and other engaging content. So I think in publishing categories, you do have a little bit more room to be a little bit more copy heavy. So, I think there's room for paragraphs. You never want to have like a 10-sentence paragraph that's just a block on the page. People they can't read it anymore. So you want to keep the paragraph short, 2 to 3 paragraphs, but also make sure you have images. Make sure you're actually showing the book, whether that's, in people's hands with it open, or if you're showing some of the art from it, or showing, an excerpt that you really like. Give people the opportunity to envision that book in their hands. What's it going to feel like for them, on a summer afternoon, reading it in their 100-degree weather with a nice glass of cold lemonade, or whatever it is. This is marketing. So get creative with your materials, your creatives, and keep people scrolling. Giving people the opportunity to visualize and emotionally resonate with whatever it is that your book is offering. So yeah, copy. It can give a general outline or description of the plot. This is kind of more of the logistical side, right? So the video and the images, those are really the emotional side. But let's use the copy on the more logics based. Didn't say that very well. But you don't want to give the whole book away, right? You don't need to give a novel synopsis. You don't have to give away the whole plot. You just have to give people a taste of the content, right? Because people want to read what they're interested in. Books take a long time to read. So make sure you build that interest, give them that logical confirmation that this is going to be a good purchase through the copy. All right. So before you go live, you got to get those reward tiers finalized. You got to finalize that funding goal. And lastly, you got to set your campaign duration. So 30 to 60 days is about right. 30 to 45 days for books, I'd say, is a good window. You want to create urgency, but you also want to give people time. We have a lot of stuff on the CrowdCrux blog if you want to check out campaign duration type stuff. But, try to shoot for 6 to 8 reward tiers. Set that funding goal as low as possible. Get your duration set for 30 days and get it rocking. Go live. Once you're live, unfortunately, it's not over yet. There's still a lot of work to be done. So you're going to want to be sending out frequent updates on the Kickstarter platform itself. You have an opportunity to do this. You just say, hey, thanks so much. We have 50 backers. We have a lot of momentum. Keeping people involved, keeping those who did back involved to maybe tell their friends or encourage them to spread the word on social media, whatever it is. So make sure you're using that update function on Kickstarter, replying to comments on your campaign page on Kickstarter, replying to comments if you're still running ads. And that goes into continually working to push traffic to your campaign page. So you're going to want to keep up your engagement emails, keep on that email list. If you've created that VIP Facebook group, keep posting in there. A lot of times people will continue to run ads. You should run more ads during the pre-launch to build your crowd, but you can still try to get some other people during launch as well. So you're always looking to be interactive. Once you launch your campaign, I would recommend, setting aside a schedule. So whether it's from, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. or 5 p.m. to 6 p.m., whatever it is, an hour or two a day, really checking in. If you can check in more than that, that's even better. But people on Kickstarter, it's a community, right? And your book project is probably going to be a little bit smaller. So you really want to facilitate that sense of community. You're not going for probably a $6 million raise. If you get there, that's great. But, each and every backer matters, and make them feel that way. Tell them how thankful for you are for bringing this vision and this project to life, because without backers, without people showing up for it, there's really not much to publishing a book, right? You might as well just keep it to yourself. So keep that in mind. Once you hit go live, you still got some work to do. Got to push all the way through that campaign duration.
Want to take all the stress out of fulfilling your Kickstarter rewards? Fulfillrite is the turnkey solution that puts product delivery on autopilot. The Top Campaigns uses trusted high-tech provider to store, package, and ship their products. Focus on growing your business. Leave shipping to the experts. Don't wait. Get a custom quote from Fulfillrite today. Link in the description.
All right, so if you all haven't checked out the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast, you definitely should do it. I listen to most of them, but especially these more creative interviews that Salvador Briggman, the founder of CrowdCrux, does. He does a ton of great interviews with great insights. from people in all different product categories. But today, I just wanted to highlight some of them that you could check out in this book publishing category, because he's talked with some really successful creators, which is, I think, one of the coolest parts about the podcast is he really gets on people that have like changed the world and changed in their respective industries. So episode 283 is called Dracula The Evidence was the book. And you can find out how the project raised $216,000. So this is a really good example of how you can kind of build a cult following, right? Bram Stoker's original, Bram Stoker? Stoker or Stroker? I'm not sure. But Bram Stoker's original Dracula, that's like kind of a cultural phenomenon, right? And there's people out there who are really obsessed with Dracula. So how do you actually find those people? That is the key, right? You got to find that niche. And this is a great episode to find out how people really just rallied behind this and pulled in their other, Dracula lovers and really made this project bigger than the team could have ever imagined. So make sure to check out episode 283. That was a really fun one for me. We mentioned this book earlier, Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls. Sal actually did an interview with them a while ago, episode 109. So an episode comes out a week. We're about 350 right now. So this would have been about a year and a half or 2 years ago, but it's still really relevant. And let me tell you, the female-led team, it's two women. They're awesome. They're funny. They're fun. And this was one of the most successful Kickstarter books of all time. So they did a really good job with media outreach. They got people talking about them, right? They had an angle that worked. It was, hey, we're looking to empower young girls to grow into be powerful women, or rebellious women, as the branding may have it here. And they really did a good job of getting blogs and other media outlets to talk about them and get people excited outside of just their own marketing, which is a really powerful tool. How they used Facebook and email to get pledges, right? How they actually mobilize that network. So getting someone to give you your email is one thing. Getting them to actually show up to that campaign page and hit buy is another. And it's all about engagement. It's all about making it exciting and interesting. And these folks did a really good job at that. And then lastly, they just give some really good insights about what it means to be a female entrepreneur, particularly in the Silicon Valley, where they do their operations. So highly recommend you check that one out. It's a really fun conversation. You'll be laughing the whole way through. And then Book of Cultures. So this is actually a more recent project on Kickstarter that had a lot of success. So this one is basically just sharing cultures with the world. It's a children's book. And this was an exciting episode because it really dove into how the children's niche within publishing, right? There's kind of these different categories within the category, which is interesting. And this one is particularly about children's books. So how they designed their stunning campaign page. As you can see just from the color scheme from that thumbnail, it's just a really attractive, happy vibe. And you can get some insights into how these folks went about creating a campaign that was genuinely exciting for parents, right? Because kids aren't making these purchasing decisions when it comes to children's books. So the marketing is a little bit different, and I definitely recommend you check that out if you're one of the children's books folks out there. Lots of children's books come into Kickstarter. That is a hot market, and bypassing the publisher there is really beneficial in a lot of ways because you don't have to copy edit an entire novel, right? It's cheaper to edit. Sometimes the materials can be a little bit cheaper because they're shorter. So if you have a children's book and you're wondering what to do with it, definitely consider Kickstarter before you go the traditional publishing route. All right. So that is what we have. I'm wondering if anybody in the room has any questions about publishing the Kickstarter book. Just general questions about Kickstarter in general. I'd be happy to take pretty much anything right now.
My question would be, you know how Amazon Kindle works, or what's it called, Pixels? Self-publishing, where you publish it on their platform and then do marketing to get people to Amazon. Mm-hmm. So that could work in a similar fashion bypassing Kickstarter. I'm just wondering what's the benefit of using Kickstarter over just sending people to Amazon? That's the question.
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. So I think the big benefit of Kickstarter is really this community-oriented feel, right? So when you send somebody to Amazon, there could be some reviews there, but it's really not showing the momentum behind the book and showing that how many other people really care about this project, right? So when you show up on a Kickstarter page, you can see this funding goal is racking up. You can see that people are commenting. You can interact with the author themselves, right? You can get in contact with them. You can hear through the voice of the author. It's a much bigger sales page, right? So on Amazon, you're going to have 300 words and no images to be able to describe this book to an audience. On a Kickstarter page, you have all this different stuff, right, that you can sell the product. And then also you have reward tiers, right? So you can offer something more than just the book. And I think that's another big separator for Amazon. So community, larger sales page, different reward tiers that can lead to a higher fundraise. These are all things that just make the book a much more interactive launch experience, right? Like you post your book on Amazon, you start running some Facebook ads. It's going to be hard to create a conversion, especially if you're an author without a name, especially if you have call it less than 10 reviews on Amazon. People really aren't going to be motivated to buy that. So I just think the whole Kickstarter community marketing strategy is really conducive to self-publishing in particular when you're trying to kind of break in, make a name, and introduce a new idea that maybe takes a little bit longer to explain.
Thank you. Yeah, good. That was a good answer. And I guess then my second question would be, so if you were to self-publish, you're saying kind of forget Amazon, find another self-publishing company, and then work with their costs instead of Kindle. Work with another self-publishing company because you're gonna promote it through Kickstarter. I'm just saying, so forget. I mean, in this case, forget Amazon's platform and self-publishing because they're kind of expensive, and then search for another publisher. Would that be a good idea?
Yeah, I mean, there's more publishing routes than ever before, right? Like it used to be, you had to get a book agent and you had to submit it to, the big publishing houses. But there's a lot of stuff out there these days. Between kind of hybrid stuff where they'll take some of it off your plate, but you also keep control. I think there's a lot of different ways, but on the Amazon front too, you can always run a Kickstarter and then post it on Amazon once you've got some social proof. But yeah, I would say right away, just going straight to Amazon. It works. It definitely works if you have a following already in place. But if you're trying to build that following, I think there's no better way than Kickstarter. And that's true of Amazon. That's true of other self-publishing platforms as well. Let's say I know I'm just kind of like a solitary writer. I have a network, I have people, but it would be tough to really build that community by just going through, another self-publishing platform that really doesn't facilitate all that interaction. Yeah.
Well, at the very beginning, you mentioned the leather-bound book, and so I mean that just sounds expensive right off the top. Creating a leather-bound book with 300 pages in it, that's got to be an expensive project right off the top. And you'd want to find a company that could do a good job producing.
Right, exactly. Quality control is definitely an issue there. And then also, because it's such an expensive book to produce, there could be a lot of publishers that are just like, we're not doing that. We have this system in place where we have, these thicker paper and then thinner paper and then done, So I think that's where, you have to cover the costs, but really at the end of the day, the consumer ends up covering those costs. You have to price your book that way. And then, a Kickstarter, I think, takes a 5% fee, but once you cover those costs, then you're kind of in the clear, right? So if you got a concept that that you can get people excited about and really, you know, sell that leather bound. Like that's in the title. That's a perfect example of a really good title. Like, ooh, leather bound. Like who doesn't want a leather bound book on their bookcase, you know? And so there's some real opportunity there. I think that's a really good example.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that was it for me.
Cool. Well, thank you for attending. I definitely, you know, I'm a writer. I'm not as much of a public speaker, so I stumbled over a couple words, but you know what? I felt like it was fun. And yeah, if you're interested in publishing a book on Kickstarter, whether you're live in the class right now or you're you know, you're on YouTube or whatever, make sure to reach out to CrowdCrux. We've worked on books before. We're working on some books right now, and we love working with book projects. So I especially love working with book projects. So if you want to work closely with me, make sure to drop us a line.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack.
Yeah.
Thanks. Friends, I'm finished if you're.
I think are we good, Zab?
Yeah, I think that's everything, unless you have, I mean, to go off this class's topic, unless you have any questions for Jack and I about your current Kickstarter campaign that we can help you with.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we're just moving forward one step at a time. It's a slow process, but the bottom line is, we're excited still, and you know, it's about, well, as you know, just kind of forming this whole image in your head, how this thing's funneling through, and then somehow it comes back where people actually kind of get what you're doing. It's like creating this conscious vibe into the world, and then I notice how it's starting to come back, you know, through our social media. It's a lot of fun, but it's a little slower. It's a slower process than I expected. Anyway.
Yeah. It's definitely a matter of staying the course and trusting that, eventually the idea is going to catch on. And then all of a sudden you kind of have that community there of people talking about it and getting it. And I think you'll find when it's all over, the long road walked will be a really rewarding one.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, if you fail, you're a failure, but if you make it, suddenly you're a genius, you know.
Right. But keep in mind, if you fail, and whatever that means, so don't reach your funding goal. That doesn't mean, you know, you got a lot of good feedback. You learned a lot, and you can always launch another campaign, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you both, and enjoy the weekend.
Yeah, you too. Have a good one.
Hey man, thank you so much for tuning in to today's class. I hope that you enjoyed it. You got a lot of value out of it, that, you know, you're ideally going to be taking action as well on this knowledge. Like, what is the point of just downloading valuable teachings and tactics and tools into your head if you're not going to use it, you're not going to apply it, right? So I'm a really big fan of, first, obviously getting super rock solid in building that foundation of knowledge that you need in order to go out there and kill it. And I think, honestly, for me in my own life, the more that I've spent time learning and investing in myself, the better I felt when I went out and actually executed. I had so much more confidence. I know what I'm doing. It's only really the people who really don't know what they're doing that don't feel confident, right? Confidence comes from knowing what you're doing. So hopefully you now know what you're doing. Now the question is, what is the next action that you're gonna take? How are you gonna hold yourself accountable to this? What are you gonna do? What step are you going to take next? And maybe right now you feel like, you know what, Sal, I totally hear you, totally understand you, man, but I'm not ready to take that step, right? I still need some more education. If that's the case, you can join my mastermind community. If you like today's class and today's lecture, you're gonna love a lot of the stuff that I got there, as well as get access to individual one-on-one coaching with me, with Sal. But if you're ready to take action, write down, if you can, in your notebook, what is the next step that you wanna take and by what date? Because if you think about it, anytime that you've really succeeded in your life, really think about it. Take the time to just pause this video if you even want to, and think about it. When is the last time that you really succeeded in your life? And I'm talking about above average. You've actually taken the time to take action and to do something in your life. Let's just say, for example, that you took the time to apply for a job, you smashed it, you got the interview, right? You started working that job, you started to really show yourself and show your skills and work hard and to learn, and you were able to rise up in the ranks and able to have a really good career for yourself in that career position. Maybe that's not what you want to do full-time, maybe, or you don't want to do that long-term. Maybe you want to do more creative stuff, right? But you were able to take action. you were able to learn, you were able to train, you were able to really hone your skills and to stand out in a tiny bit of an exceptional way. Now, it might not be career for you. You might also exceed in other areas of your life. Maybe, for example, you had a killer career when it comes to playing sports when you were younger, and you were part of like a sports team, a baseball team, a basketball team, a cheerleading team, anything under the sun, right? Maybe you were part of a team environment and you were able to succeed and you went into varsity or junior varsity, or you're really proud of the kinds of accomplishments that you had there as an athlete, as a student athlete, right? And I think that takes gumption, man. That takes a little bit of chutzpah, right? That takes that fire in the belly to not only want to and believe in yourself, but to also put yourself in the right position to succeed, to have a coach, to have teammates that can hold you accountable, right? And you're doing something, you're actively taking action, you're practicing every day that pursuit. And then eventually you look back and you're like, wow, I've actually accomplished a lot of stuff. I got a trophy maybe, or my team did really well in the playoffs, or for me, my sport was fencing, right? So in fencing, we do letter grades. It's kind of, I don't know why we do it that way, but when I first got my C, which is a ranking in fencing, I was like ecstatic, and I never really thought I could even get it, honestly. But eventually I did. I just kept working on it, kept getting better. And to me, that was just like a fundamental breakthrough in my life, because I realized, wow, when I work at something, when I put my mind to it, when I learn strategy, I'm actually able to do cool stuff, right? I'm actually able to surprise even myself. And let me ask you this question. What if the person that you want to be, the person you want to take footsteps towards being, and really the version of yourself that you enjoy being most, let's just say being that creative individual, but also being able to finance that and to have a career out of that, what if this is that opportunity? What if by launching a Kickstarter campaign, maybe it's a smash hit the first time, maybe you only raise 5 figures, right? Maybe you don't become one of those massive success stories. How would that change your life? Even if it was only minimally successful, let's just say you only raised like $15,000 on Kickstarter or $20,000 for a book campaign, right? What would that mean for you? How would that open up your mind to consider even more possibilities? What foundation would that lay for you then to launch another campaign, to draw on that existing network of subscribers? It gets easier. It's like skiing downhill. The first time you do anything online, the first time I became a blogger in 2012 when I first put out articles on crowdfunding, and then I got into podcasting, and then I got into writing books. I've written 10 books, then I got into YouTube, right? In the first time that I started any of those pursuits, it was so hard. It's like you're hiking uphill, but not only that, it's like you're trying to hike a glacier, right? And it's slippery, and you're trying to wedge yourself into the ice and use your ice pick and try to climb up the glacier, and it's so hard, and you're scared, and you're uncertain. You don't even know if this is the right path. Do you have the right map, right, for this mountain? You're always questioning yourself. There are always doubts. But I'll tell you, the second time that you then begin to do that, for example, put out another YouTube video, or writing another book, or creating another Kickstarter campaign, or doing any of these things, it's like you go from hiking up a glacier to skiing down a mountain. And skiing, man, is fun. Skiing is like an adventure. You're not really kind of worried as much when you're skiing. It's more like you're just enjoying the moment. You're just going through the groove. You're carving through the snow, and you're just kind of enjoying the process. You're enjoying the air, and it is a challenge. Like, if anyone tells you that skiing or snowboarding is not a challenge, they're completely lying. It's hard to snowboard. The first few times that I snowboarded, I kept falling on my butt, right? I kept falling. I kept being like, do I really want to learn this? My legs are shaking. My muscles are not used to this. And then, lo and behold, a couple weeks later, a couple months later, get better, right? And I'm like, you know what? This is actually kind of fun. I can see why people do this. But think about that. What if you were the first person to ski or snowboard and you quit? You would not realize that there's all of this fun in the future, that there's all this opportunity in the future to enjoy it. And that's really, at the end of the day, what any career should be, is you should enjoy it. Enjoy the process. It's going to be stressful the first few times you do it. But once you start to actually follow a proven step and a proven process, which I try to document in my mastermind, Smash Your Kickstarter Goal, I also do with my coaching students, obviously, with all my materials. Once you master the process, once you begin to get yourself doing it on that other side of uncertainty and fear, there is adventure to be had. And more than that, there is a gold rush. There's a gold rush of opportunity that not a lot of people know about. And it's hard to do, but that's what's keeping a lot of people out of the game, in my opinion. And just listen to the podcast, listen to the success stories, listen to the people that are coming on my show, and take it from the horse's mouth. You know, you don't have to listen to me, listen to them and see what they have to say about it. Hope you enjoyed this video. My name is Salvador Briggman. Thank you so much for joining me. Give me a thumbs up if you liked this video. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you next time.